killing Sukuna's final plan. But at the same time, there's also about 7 pages of borderline useless dialogue from Sukuna. So today, I'm going to let you form your own opinions about this chapter by giving you all the facts, and tying in all the possible theories and confirmations that we got from the facts that we were given in Chapter 248. So get ready to put your opinion hats on, because today we're talking Chapter 248, or Sukuna's final plan. But before we get talking about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noty bell. And if you love the idea of me breaking down some of the newest anime and manga, then you're gonna love my podcast, Doctors Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata talk about all things anime. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you're starting to look like somebody who keeps up with all the trends of anime, then go ahead and meander into my merch store, DoctorsAnonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, sticker packs on demand. So, Chapter 248, it opens up right where Chapter 247 left off, with Yuji holding the Executioner blade poised to stab Sukuna in the back. But before Yuji is able to complete the motion of stabbing this blade into Sukuna's back, fades. Kind of. Like I predicted. Well, technically, I didn't predict that the sword would fade out of existence. But what I did predict after the conclusion of Chapter 247 is that there's no way that Sukuna's gonna die. It just wasn't right. It felt too early, we haven't established who inherited Kenjaku's will, and, well, it sounds kind of ridiculous, Yuji hasn't gone through enough. And really, did anybody think that Yuji was gonna pull off killing Sukuna in Chapter 248? I know that Gege Tommy said at Jump Festa that JJK would be done by the time that next year's Jump Festa happened, but we didn't think it was gonna be like a month later, did we? However, the Executioner blade fading from existence might actually be good news. At least for Higuruma. Now, before I get into all this, I'd like to establish the fact that I am so tepid on Higuruma as a character. I have no biased opinion on this. I don't dislike Higuruma's character, but I also don't love him. Like, I fully understand that there's nothing wrong with Higuruma's character. I appreciate his character development arc. I think him being a public defendant, falls out of love with the legal system is cool. I think that the potential he showed as a new sorcerer was really interesting, and I think his techniques were really cool. But, like, I don't know, if I had to make a top 10 favorite characters in JJK, he's not making the list. See, the reason that I'm telling all of this to you is that the reason that this might be good news is that Higuruma's blade fading from existence means that he might actually still be alive. See, in Chapter 247, Higuruma's talking with Kusakabe, and in this conversation, essentially, Higuruma's setting up the fact that curses get stronger after you die. And both him and Kusakabe agree on the fact. And therefore, hypothetically, if his curse technique was still manifested after his death, then it shouldn't get weaker, but stronger. Which means that the Executioner's sword fading from existence means that he's probably still alive, and that he ran out of cursed energy. Because if he had died, the Executioner blade would have gotten stronger, and Yuji might have actually been able to stab Sukuna in the back. And Higuruma remaining alive is actually backed up by a couple of other points that happen in this chapter. But having the theory of Higuruma's alive runs counter to basically everything that Sukuna says. As immediately after watching the Executioner's sword fade out of existence, he says, oh, even though that sorcerer died, he took Kumatoke with him. Now, Kumatoke was Sukuna's weird cursed weapon that uses electrified Ki that Kashimo was invulnerable to and that Judge Man confiscated. And thus Sukuna is saying that Kumatoke is gone forever. But he's also saying that Higuruma is also gone forever. Then again, in Chapter 247, Sukuna believed that the piercing blood shot at him was from Chozo, who he double-rigged. So maybe Sukuna's perception isn't the greatest, as it seems fairly obvious, at least to me, that the person who shot that piercing blood was Yuji, not Chozo. Especially because we as readers never saw Chozo, like, wounded standing trying to shoot a piercing blood at him. On top of this, after Sukuna makes this astute observation, Wee and Kirara show up to pick up Higuruma's body. Well, he doesn't look great when they pick him up. He also doesn't look super dead. On top of this, after Wee or Yee or however you say his name, and Kirara pick up Higuruma, Sukuna makes the observation and confirms a theory that many of us have had for years, ever since the Meimei scene, that Wee Yu victim has a teleportation technique. Which is why Meimei says, while on the phone with apparently stockbrokers or the Illuminati, that she and Wee escaped Japan by using his technique, which tired him out. Now, we still don't know the particulars of his technique, but we know it's a teleportation technique. Probably has the ability to set a marked point, like a hotel room in Malaysia, or wherever Shoko is, and then jump to and from that point. But it could also be free and completely limitless teleportation. We just don't know. On top of this moment of these two coming for Higuruma's body confirms to us beyond any shadow of a doubt that Kenjaku will never get Gojo's body. We know this because Sukuna, upon watching them pick up Higuruma and teleport him away to Shoko, says, oh, that's why Gojo's body disappeared earlier. And well, technically, now that I'm saying it out loud, all that really confirms to us that Gojo's body disappeared. And I guess you could just as easily make the argument that Wee and Kirara got Gojo's body as basically anybody else. But consider the fact that Wee got to Higuruma in a matter of like 3 seconds after him collapsing. I feel as though it's pretty safe to assume that they're the ones who collected Gojo's body. However, them getting both of these bodies, to me at least, is somewhat curious. See, I understand learning from your techniques and not leaving corpses laying around for Kenjaku to stumble upon. If we hadn't done that in the first place, Kenjaku wouldn't be nearly as strong as he is now, or was. But the Jujutsu Sorcerer Coalition, or Team Kusakabe as I call them, knew Kenjaku's location. In fact, they had a plan to kill him. And I know they knew Kenjaku's location because not only did they get Yuta there, but they also got Takuma there. Which means that Team Kusakabe has had a lock on Kenjaku's location almost this entire time. And while sure, Kenjaku's got a bunch of cursed spirits lurking around that could have picked up any of these bodies, they had a plan to assassinate Kenjaku far away from Gojo's body. And Kenjaku didn't seem all that interested in Gojo's body. He just watched Gojo die on his personalized television stream and then went, alright, cool, thank God for Sukuna. And yet Team Kusakabe put their lives on the line to collect these bodies. And while one could say that they're just being redundant, I can guarantee you when this chapter actually becomes live and official, this revelation that Wee Wee and Kurara were able to collect Gojo's body and bring him to Shoko will 1000% reignite the passion of all Gojo fans on Earth. Listen, when this chapter comes out on the 21st, you better believe that the JJK fandom will pretty much all but just simply agree for another week or two that Gojo is just alive again. This is going to be the heaviest relapse on copium we've ever seen. A copioid crisis, if you will. And I, for one, am actually kind of excited to see that. Even though you should probably know that Kenjaku is dead by now, is another point in the column of Higuruma still probably alive. Because even Sukuna in this chapter was able to make the revelation that Kenjaku was dead. And it's not like Kenjaku was able to get that message along to Sukuna. Yuta would be able to get that message along to Team Kusakabe. I'm sure everybody knows that Kenjaku is dead. Sukuna doesn't seem impressed by this body closure. Makes perfect sense, because for those of you who don't remember, Kurara has one of the most complicated yet cool curse techniques in all of JJK. Her curse technique, Love Rendezvous, works by marking people or things with one of 5 stars. And those stars are based off the Southern Cross constellation. Now, if you're marked with a star, in order to get to something else marked with a star, you have to find all the other individual items or people marked with a star and go to those items or people in the order of the Southern Cross constellation as it pertains to the closeness to Earth. That is incredibly complicated, so let me break it down a little easier. Essentially, a constellation isn't flat in the sky. A constellation, while it may not look like it, has layers. The stars of Orion's belt do not go in a straight line across our sky. One of the suns is closer, one is somewhere in the middle, and one is the furthest away, which means that the stars that compose the Southern Cross constellation vary in how far they are from Earth. So let's say, hypothetically, my glasses are marked with the closest star to Earth, and I'm marked with the farthest star from Earth. I would have to find the other 4 stars and touch them before I could ever get back to my glasses, which just essentially means that Kurara is able to set up a very complicated, non-obvious maze if she's able to interact with somebody's cursed energy. But there's more to it. If you deviate from the maze, that is to say that you go to the second closest star to the Earth before you go to the 4th closest star to the Earth, anything that is marked with the star that you are marked with will be attracted to you. So if I deviated from the maze while on my way to my glasses and my headphones were marked with the same star as me, they would fly over to me and hit me in the face. And no matter what I did with these headphones, if I threw them, kicked them, pushed them away, they would always be attracted to me. Now, well, if it's headphones, it's not all that dangerous, but if you are a car or a house or a building, it definitely can be. So why would we need that particular technique while collecting bodies? Well, it is a possibility that Kurara was just thrown onto the team because we needed somebody well, maybe it was on Team Surprise Attack to be completely useless. I'm just still kind of scratching my head as to why it's Kirara. I mean, maybe she's using her technique to pull people to Shoka. Maybe her technique allows me to decentralize on the teleportation return point. Or maybe, and this is grim, she's using her technique to pull everybody's body parts back together, which would be slightly necessary with somebody like Gojo. On top of this, it's important to note that her cursed technique only requires that she touch the cursed energy of the person she's trying to mark. And therefore, it's also a possibility that she was sent to pick up Higuruma because Sukuna has one hand laying on the ground, and as we all know, Sukuna's fingers are slightly imbued with his cursed energy, and thus there's also the possibility that Kirara was sent to pick up Higuruma so that she could touch Sukuna's energy. But as it currently stands, we don't know, and I might be the only person legitimately asking that question. By the way, her presence in the chapter is immediately overshadowed. After she takes Higuruma's body away, it's revealed that, oh yeah, Yuji has complete and total reverse curse technique. Like, we're not just talking fixing cuts and bumps and bruises. He regenerates the entirety of his own stomach. And now I'm only saying this because I know somewhere out there somebody will make this brain-dead argument, but there is no way that the thing that Yuji was training with Choso and Norikoshi Kamo in was reverse curse technique, as neither of them are confirmed to know how to use it. He's training with them to learn blood manipulation. It is literally the only thing that both of them know. Now, after this revelation that Yuji is now, 30 times more powerful than he was before, we unfortunately kind of wander into Sukuna yapping territory. As Sukuna begins to ponder as to why Yuji getting back up every time he knocks him down is so irksome. And while he's pondering to himself, standing completely still on a battlefield, he reminds himself that his life is just killing time until he dies. Which, when I guess you're the strongest entity on the entirety of the planet, you've been alive for close to 1,000 years in some categorization of living, I guess that is the conclusion you would come to. As Sukuna comes to the conclusion that he's always come to, that the only reason he's alive is to fight the strong, eat what he wants, and live completely free. Now, after coming to this astute conclusion, Sukuna comes to a part of his pondering that lost me a little bit, and this is mostly a symptom of the leaks that I was reading. Make sure you always read the official releases. They're just way better. Sukuna says that he gets irritated whenever he sees somebody die for their ideals. But then immediately after saying that, he said that there was somebody like Yuji 1,000 years ago who was willing to die for their ideals. And then he followed this up by saying that he was the person who changed 1,000 years ago. But then Sukuna says to Yuji that he's the person that he fought 1,000 years ago. He's just some brat from today. Now, while the way that it's worded in the leaks is slightly confusing, I think the gist of what Sukuna is saying here is that Yuji reminds him of somebody that he fought 1,000 years ago. Somebody whose will was so unbendable that it was actually Sukuna's will who bent first. And that person that Sukuna battled 1,000 years ago is probably the person who defeated Sukuna and cut him up into 20 fingers. And this isn't the first time that Sukuna has made some kind of observation tying Yuji to the past. As when Yuji bursts onto the stage during the Culling Games to battle against Sukuna after he's taken over Megumin's body, Sukuna makes a kind of passing observation about Yuji, saying that, he's from that period, implying that Kenjaku has altered Yuji's body to resemble somebody possibly from the Heian period, and thus the idea that Yuji is either the reincarnation or the vessel of some legendary sorcerer from 1,000 years ago who defeated Sukuna has always been a theory passed around through the Jinchuriki community, and now it appears as though this is simply going to be more wood for fire. Asuka is now rather blatantly tying Yuji to a sorcerer who had an unbending will 1,000 years ago. But just like Sukuna dismisses for the entire story, he dismisses this theory, possibly reassuring himself that there is no way that Yuji could be this sorcerer, possibly because he believes that Yuji doesn't live up to that hype, or because he's afraid of what that might mean. However, this doesn't mean that Sukuna doesn't acknowledge Yuji's strength. It does. As after this connection, Sukuna tells Yuji that he is indefatigable. That is a word I had to look up. It just means you're somebody who doesn't fatigue. But why add the duh in there? Infatigable makes way more sense. The niceties don't last long, because after calling Yuji indefatigable, it's a very hard word to say. He says that he'll mince up everybody's ideals. And it's this point that he adds a new rule. Through the Culling Game kind of that thing. I forget its name. And that rule is that the merger between Japan and Tengen may now be conducted by Megumi. Sukuna. Because even though Sukuna looks like Sukuna, Megumi's still in there. He then, for some reason, eats the rulebug thing. And it's at this point that we get to know Sukuna's true master plan. And that is to merge all of Japan with Tengen and then fight that version of Tengen. Yes, that's right. The final goal of the now main villain of JJK is to kill all of Japan to make a super Tengen and then fight that Tengen so that Sukuna can finally have what he dictates as a good fight. Which, actually, this makes sense for Sukuna. Sukuna. Like, this entire chapter is about Sukuna not really knowing why he's alive. Like, he's saying, I eat when I want to eat, I kill those who are an eyesore, and I live how I want to live. And killing all of Japan to make Super Tengen so that he can finally have a good fight. Kingdom Light that goes down. Which is still wild. On top of the Sukuna now being the person who's going to merge Japan with Tengen, means that more likely than not, the person that Kenjaku was talking about when he said that somebody would inherit his will was Sukuna. And while I always thought that that was a possibility, it seemed too obvious. Like, all of us have been so trained by JJK to look for the least obvious answer to any possible motivation or question in this manga. And so when Kenjaku said that somebody's gonna inherit his will, we looked at Yuji, we looked at Takaba, we looked at Gojo, but none of us really looked at Sukuna, who was like, is definitely the most obvious answer. Like, if anybody's gonna inherit Kenjaku's will, yeah, it's probably the guy who's on his side. Then again, the obvious never happens in the story, so we've been trained to not make that conclusion. That's not true. The obvious does happen in the story, but only if you're incredibly macabre and you hate everything. But all of this, to me at least, essentially confirms that Kenny is dead and gone. As we now know who's inherited Kenjaku's will, and it's Sukuna, and Sukuna inherited Kenjaku's will. Kenjaku backselected and faster, which means that Sukuna now is the inheritor of Kenjaku's will, and the continuer of Kenjaku's master plan is almost guaranteed to be the final villain of JJK. But who's gonna take down this final villain? Well, after Sukuna screams out his master plan for all of Japan, Yuto Katsu kicks down the door waving the 4-4. But instead of the 4-4, it's Rika. Rika's here. It immediately begins to clash with Sukuna. Chapter ends with the biggest version of Rika we've ever seen, trying to smash Sukuna with one of her hands. And during this exchange, Sukuna is teasing Rika, saying that if you don't defeat me, I'll kill everybody you've ever loved. To which Rika responds by saying, and at least this is what the leaks are saying, who the fuck are you talking to? And while that probably won't end up in the official translation, my god, do I hope it does. To which Sukuna retorts by saying, here she is, the queen. And this is chapter 249, where you will see the long-awaited battle between the king and queen of curses, which will probably result in Rika's death and Yuta's nerfing. But I do believe that during this clash between Yuta and Sukuna, that there will be an opening created for either Yuji or somebody else to finish off Sukuna. Is at least what I believe would, like, 50% of my heart. Because the other 50% of my heart is like, okay, Nick, use anime logic. If a possible consequence or Final Four is ever hinted at, it will happen. And it will be up to the main character of the story to go around that final circumstance and reach far beyond all that they were ever able to achieve. Now that Sukuna has said that he wants to merge all of Japan with Tengen to battle against Tengen, part of my heart is thinking, my god, that might just happen. Because it's been introduced. The concept has been introduced. It's what Sukuna wants. And I just don't see a world in which Yuta beats Sukuna. Listen, I understand that Yuta is incredibly powerful. But while Gojo was battling against Sukuna, Yuta was watching going, oh my god, I didn't know we could do half those things. And sure, Yuji is there, and maybe Yuji is the reincarnated 1,000-year-old sorcerer, but something is speaking to me from the back of my mind, saying that Sukuna is going to be successful in the giant Japanese merger. However, the overarching story about JJK will be about pride, and Sukuna will lose against this super version of Tengen, possibly because of the strength of all of the sorcerers absorbed into Tengen. And the Sukuna will finally achieve the thing that he actually wants, death. And here's the thing, we know that Sukuna wants to die. He basically says it in this chapter, that he lives his life to fill out the time of his living before he dies. So maybe, just maybe, Sukuna achieves what he wants to, battles against Super Tengen. Listen, I understand that to get Super Tengen, you have to kill all of the Woman Gamers. It's like